No one wants you to know this. The banks love nothing more than locking you into decades-long mortgage plans that extract from you as much interest as possible. But what if I told you there's an escape hatch? The clip you're about to watch from financial educator Christy Van is one that banks are going to hate, which is why I've decided to take a deep dive into how you put it into action. Obviously, this is not financial advice, but subscribe to the channel for more discussions like this, and let's dive into it.
So the mortgage is a 30-year mortgage at 7.75%. Guys, if you're in these ridiculous interest rates, I don't care if it was going on in the 80s or not. It's going on right now. If you didn't have the knowledge in the 1980s and you went ahead and you paid this ridiculous interest, then I'm sorry. It was only because you weren't taught the truth. This video is going to teach you the truth about what that 7.75 interest rate means to you. I want everybody that has a mortgage to go get your contract documents right now. I'll wait. Go to the closing documents section. Look in your closing documents section of the contract. You're going to see where it says your interest rate. I don't care if it's 2% or 8%. Then look in the small print below your interest rate. It's going to say in capital letters, this is not your interest rate. Now go down to the next line. You're going to see another line that says, this is your actual interest rate. And if you're at 3%, it's going to be approximately 60%. This 7.75%, that's not 7.75%. Take that times 2 and then add a 0. They're going to be paying over 150% in interest on this mortgage.
And here's the number one thing that a bank will want to exploit as far as they legally can, which is your ignorance when it comes to the fine print of your mortgage agreement. Surveys have repeatedly found that a quarter of Americans have no idea what the real interest rate on their mortgage even is, let alone the different jargon and technicalities that they're signing up for. That means there's a massive gap there left to exploit, even as you shell out hundreds or even thousands of dollars every month. Firstly, you'd be surprised at how many people didn't even understand the difference between interest and interest rate. Statistically, one is an absolute figure while one is a continuous percentage. In other words, a 7.5% interest on your mortgage appears reasonable at first glance to most people. After all, credit cards charge upwards of 25% interest or more, and things like payday loans can be the worst offenders of all with even more egregious interest rates. But the truth is, for each of 30 years that you have a mortgage, your interest rate is calculated every single year on whatever remaining balance that you have left. And here's the worst part. The amortization plans that lay out those payment structures deliberately pay off as little of the principal amount as possible, so the bank always has a large chunk of your principal amount left to charge you interest on. Seen from this angle, you're not paying a 7.75% interest. Multiply 7.75 times 30 years, that's 230% that you're paying in interest over the course of your entire mortgage. That's basically like buying 1.5 more houses on top of your own just to give it to the bank. This is just one of the ways in which banks make you poor and then punish you for it. There's a solution, however. Listen to this.
Let's teach you a way that you can beat that and be excited to pay for your home, not paying for the bank's home first. When you're paying this much interest in every single payment that you're making, you might as well drive down the street, roll your window down, and throw $871 out the window going down the street. You know what? At least it will help some people on the street that need the money. This is going to the banks. This is just you making them richer. How can you stop that? What if you took a $10,000 chunk and put up on this mortgage? And I know some of you naysayers out there are saying, well, who's got $10,000? Well, guess what? There are things called lines of credit at the bank, and you can use the lines of credit any way you want to. Most banks have them available. Most credit unions have them available. Check it out. See if you can't find you a line of credit to do what you are getting ready to see here. This is not magic. This is just math. So we talked about getting a $10,000 chunk and paying it onto this mortgage principal.
Now that line of credit can be of any kind, but there's something interesting. The initial down payment you make as well as the payments you've made so far have given you equality in your house. Granted, it's small, but it's a portion of the house that you truly own in a legal and financial sense, and that means you can borrow against that equity through something called a HELOC or home equity line of credit. A lot of Americans are already diving into things like their retirement accounts and life insurance policies early as the financial crunch makes them struggle to make ends meet. Doing the same with your home equity, but with a different purpose, can potentially help you skip several steps on the amortization schedule. Simply put, you use the revolving line of credit worth $10,000 and use it to pay off the principal amount early. A lot of people don't know that they can because that's not the same as simply making your mortgage payments early. It's about paying off the principal before the interest and therefore reducing the principal amount remaining for the bank to charge you interest on. Yes, you're incurring interest on your line of credit as well, but it's much smaller in absolute terms when you factor in the time frame and the amount. Think of each year of the 30-year amortization schedule as being steps on a ladder. The bank doesn't want you to skip any steps, so you take as long as possible and pay as much as possible, but paying off the principal early means taking a few large steps to skip the smaller ones, eventually saving you many years on your mortgage and, as a consequence, the interest you would otherwise pay for those years.
If you know anything about an amortization schedule, and I'm showing you one now, that is what every loan is set up on, an amortization schedule. So every month you have a set monthly payment, right? This schedule will show you how much of your payment is going towards interest and how much is going towards principal, which is what I showed you right here. So according to the amortization schedule, a $10,000 chunk on this $135,000 mortgage brings it down to $125,000, but it skips from December 2023 all the way to July of 2030. Yeah, you heard me right. 2030. That means that because they were allowed to skip almost 7 years on the amortization schedule, they are going to save $65,520 in interest for a one-time $10,000 chunk that they are going to pay off in 6 months.
You'll never hear something like this even remotely mentioned. In fact, quite the opposite. Mortgage brokers are more in commissions when they bring on board larger mortgages for the bank. Basically, at interest levels that high, you're buying 2 houses over 30 years, one just for the bank itself, and the mere fact that most of your payments for the first decade go primarily toward the interest means it's a deliberate design to keep you on that amortization ladder. It's certainly interesting that someone like Christy, who has spent years as a mortgage underwriter, is saying it out loud, making people think before they sign the contract.
Is that insane? I mean, I even do these scenarios and I think to myself, oh wow, I must have done something wrong because those figures just aren't right. No, it's right. This is the difference of allowing a mortgage to absorb your hard-earned money and moving into a line of credit that you can control because you're putting your income in, pulling your expenses out, letting your cash flow work this down every month, saving tens of thousands of dollars in interest. This is simple math. You have to run the numbers yourself. I don't care if you're 2 years into your mortgage, you can still save a killing and get out of that mortgage fast by using a line of credit. There are personal lines of credit. There are home equity lines of credit. There are lines of credit that can take over your whole mortgage called a first lien HELOC. You have options. You just didn't realize you did.
Isn't that an incredible window into how mere timely information can save you decades of troubles? Mortgages started off as a means for every citizen to live the American dream, but with skyrocketing housing costs and stagnant wages, perhaps it's time to think about workarounds to this traditional path to home ownership. There has to be a better way to do things, and Christy Van may have laid out one, if not a lot of people know about. Let me know in the comments what you think about all of this, because there's no doubt that there's a large percentage of Americans today that are struggling with keeping up with their mortgage payments and housing costs in the long run.